Superman has always held fast to a few ideals, those mainly of truth, justice, and doing the right thing even when it's the hardest thing that you could possibly do. And those things are great, especially in a vacuum, and particularly they're great for Superman. They propelled him to not only be a wonderful hero, but a great person. But what if Superman felt that it was those exact ideals that were holding him back from being the type of hero that he needed to be in order to keep as many people as possible safe? What if Superman forgot what it meant to be hopeful, to believe that even the most evil of his villains can have hope for a better day, a better future, and a better life? And it's in the 4th season of Justice League Unlimited that we see Superman start to struggle with cynicism bleeding into his heroism. I think Bruce Timm always did a great job of writing a Superman that was much more human. He had flaws, he would get angry, he could be upset, but I think they really took it a step forward with the 4th season of Justice League Unlimited. It gave me some of the most compelling and interesting Superman content I had seen growing up, because for the most part, I just thought he was super powerful and kind of boring because of it, because I had not been exposed to a writer's room that was willing to challenge Superman, not just physically, but on the ideals that he holds so close to himself, and to turn those very ideals that Superman holds into his own kryptonite. And it all actually starts back during the 2nd season of Justice League, particularly in the 2-part special, A Better World. On this Earth, we see a Lex Luthor that has become president and presumably assassinated the Flash. All of this leads to Superman breaking. He invades the White House and ultimately eliminates Lex Luthor from the census. And we are greeted to a world run by the Justice League, an authoritarian world. We see a world that is technically safer. There is almost no crime. There is no famine, no hurt, no hunger, at least that we are presented in the episode. But it comes at the cost. Free speech and protesting are almost non-existent at this point. There are no more elections. There is no more say from the average person in what goes on in that world. It is always what is deemed best by the Justice League. Just like how the Justice League has deemed it best that you like and subscribe to this video. The Justice League rule the world with an iron fist, and even Lois Lane, being the reporter that she is, has questions for this version of Superman. She is struggling to see where the man she fell in love with and the man that now sits in front of her coexist. When did they converge and when did they differ as people? This presents us the typical bad Superman allegory. I mean, he's even out here lobotomizing his villains. As a matter of fact, he lobotomized most of the villains on his Earth, all for the simple fact of hopefully protecting the world so that nobody will ever be lost like the Flash again, and so that no villain can ever pose any sort of threat or challenge to the Justice League and to their authoritative rule on the planet. Yeah, this whole lobotomy thing was really dark for a kid's TV show. I can't believe they got away with this. Presents a world in which Superman's morals have completely failed. The things that he held so dear to himself for so long, he cast aside. He saw them as shackles. He was so far gone that nothing mattered to him except for keeping what he believes is the peace.
Can't do it, can you? I'm the last piece of your conscience. And this is the one thing you'll never do.
I've done a lot of things I thought I'd never do these last 2 years. One more won't hurt.
Now, obviously, unlike the Justice Lord's Superman, our Superman isn't down for all of these things. Rather, he instead enlists the help of Lex Luthor in order to stop the Justice Lords and the Justice Lord's version of Superman. This version of Superman hasn't forgot what it means to be hopeful, but there is a difference between being hopeful and being naive. He knows very well himself that he could succumb to the same level of temptation that his Justice Lord counterparts did.
Knew you wouldn't be able to change his mind.
Yeah? How?
Because I've felt the same temptations he has. They're pretty strong.
But it is still his belief in hope and his belief in others that allows him to even partner with Lex Luthor, to give Lex Luthor a pardon in exchange for his help fighting this version of Superman. But it would be that very pardon and that very hope that comes to bite Supes in the ass just a few seasons later during Justice League Unlimited's 2nd season, when Lex Luthor decides to run for president. And a lot has happened personally, not to just Superman, but to the League in general, since that 2-part special that featured the Justice Lords. We have had Hawkgirl betray the team, betray the sanctity of the Justice League, We have seen the Justice League expand to Justice League Unlimited, so many members all needing oversight. We have seen the Justice League use an orbital space laser to protect other people, but as the Justice League become more and more almost like a superhero military, the more people are starting to be afraid of them, afraid that without any sort of true oversight, they might do something dangerous. One of the scenes that I feel is most telling to me is the way the Justice League sit around the round table in the Watchtower. They watch over everybody, but also preside over the beings of humanity, telling them how they should act and what they should do, who they should forgive and who they shouldn't forgive. By this point in the series, the League is looking a little bit jaded and a lot more similar to Cadmus. They illustrate this very well in this round table scene that hopefully you guys on YouTube are getting to see, in which they show the Justice League being mirrored by Cadmus. Now mind you, Cadmus is bad. Let's just get that straight out of the gate. These guys created Doomsday, for example. Yes, that's a retcon, because Doomsday couldn't talk in his first appearance, he was kind of dumb, and now he can talk, and now he's a part of Cadmus, despite originally being said he was from space. It's a whole retcon thing that the Watchtower database talked about, so I would direct you to their video on the subject, because they'll definitely explain it way better than I ever could. Now, of course, with Doomsday's return and the fact that they're low-key in an active volcano of which they're trying to evacuate people from, Superman now has to fight him in said volcano, all while people are trying to be moved off the island to safety. Oh, and the US government is looking to obliterate that island off the census because Doomsday was caught there, so Amanda Waller has to tell Batman about that. And while during the fight, Superman starts to get desperate. Something that we have definitely seen happen in the Justice Lords universe, and in that desperation, Superman tries to lobotomize Doomsday, the exact same way the Justice Lords were able to beat him. He mirrors the acts of aggression that the original Justice Lord member has. He chooses to try and get rid of Doomsday's intelligence entirely to beat him, because he can't do it physically. It's a move of pure desperation from a hero that we know at his core is good, but ultimately he chose to make a bad decision in order to try and save the day. One that makes him look far more like a counterpart he wouldn't want to be associated with. And it is really in this next move that he chooses to do that leaves us questioning, where is Superman and where are his ideals, specifically in this fourth season. His ideals seem to become more and more of a shackle on the way he orbits over the world, essentially. For reference, they all, as a league, decide to sentence, minus Batman, sentence Doomsday to being sent to the Phantom Zone. Now, obviously, the Phantom Zone isn't a place you'd want to be, especially if you've seen it on Young Justice. It's horrible, but it's also safe because it keeps Doomsday away from the people, and it also prevents anybody from attacking Doomsday. But at the same time, does the Justice League have the authority to send someone to the Phantom Zone, even if they are a major threat, especially a sentient being?
Come on, passing judgment like gods, with our superpowered army and our orbiting death ray. Cadmus is right to be scared. The human race wouldn't stand a chance.
What's very interesting is the council that presided over Doomsday were all superpowered beings. There were no normal humans in the mix because Batman's the only one that sits on the Justice League's little original 7 council. Everybody else has superpowers. If they decided to really go AWOL, the world doesn't have a lot of recourse against all 6 of them, or 7 including Batman if he would join up. Cadmus does have a right to be scared, but do the ends justify the means for them is essentially what I'm getting at. Especially because Cadmus knows about the Justice Lords. They know about a Superman that went rogue when Lex Luthor ran for president and completely took over the world. They have good reason to be afraid. Does that make their methods correct? No, but it justifies their fears. Now, it's not like Superman is out here going crazy off rip or anything like that, but the cracks are starting to show. While he's still out there saving as many people as he possibly can and doing the right thing, in an episode like Clash, we see him stress tested by Billy Batson. Now, this is pre-New 52 Billy, so think like the innocent child that gets the powers of Shazam because he's such a good person, relative to what you'll see in most media today, where he's a little bit older and a bit more of a dick. I like both for their own reasons, but specifically in this show, Billy is a 10-year-old with a heart of gold. He believes in people, he believes in the idea that people can change, and he believes in the idea that if you work hard enough, you can be a better person. All of these things that Superman once firmly believed in. He shares almost the exact same ideals that Superman has, with one key difference, and that is the Superman that we have now is jaded. He is older, he is wiser, and he has experienced more than Billy has. Despite Billy having the wisdom of Solomon, Billy is still naive because Billy is still a child. This superhero game is fairly new to him, and a lot of the villains that we have been told that he's fought, for the most part, aren't playing mind games as somebody like a Lex Luthor would, or aren't doing nefarious gray area things like Cadmus. He sees it pretty black and white for the most part. And I also like that when we see Billy throughout this episode, he radiates this excited energy that a 10-year-old would have if they're getting to meet all of their favorite superheroes. For reference, Superman is the person Billy looks up to. When he bases his wants and needs of being a hero, the ideals that he has, he bases them off Superman, and he says that plain as day. Now, unfortunately, Billy made the mistake of talking to the press and specifically saying that he thought Lex Luthor running for president was cool because he believes in the idea of redemption. Obviously, no league member should probably be making their endorsements for presidential candidates, especially Lex Luthor, especially publicly, but I can see where Billy's coming from in the idea that, hey, this man is trying to change and he's trying to be a better person. Because I'll be one to say, Lex Luthor's putting up a pretty good front. Like, you and me, we know what Lex Luthor's on, but in universe, and if we can think about it without the, hindsight's 2020, Lex Luthor's looking like a pretty decent person, at least leading up to these episodes. He doesn't look absolutely horrific. And ultimately, Billy gets into a tiff with Superman about this. But Billy, he's a good person, he's a good kid, and so ultimately, he does accept what Superman said, even if he thinks it's a little unfair. And while he's still rooting for Lex Luthor and makes that pretty clear as they watch Lex Luthor, give an interview on the news, Lex ultimately in that interview invites Superman to come see he's building the land of tomorrow. It's essentially going to be a lot of housing for the disenfranchised and the people that truly need it. Something that is noble and of course looks really, really good in a PR standpoint. So again, you could argue the idea of doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, because if you're running for president, it looks really, really great if you spend your billions of dollars trying to build housing for those kids. But ultimately, the housing for those kids is absolutely needed. And families too, it's not just kids. Either way, Superman only decides to attend after he and Batman discover that weapons-grade kryptonite has been stolen, and Batman urges him to go just to keep an eye on Lex Luthor.
Go to that charity event tonight. You'll help raise some money and keep an eye on our elusive Mr. Luthor.
And so Superman attends, mostly to keep an eye on Lex Luthor and to see if he is doing anything shady. Now, Lex has been developing what is ostensibly a power source that is fueled on kryptonite, because kryptonite apparently can do that. I don't know, man. Either way, Lex is using that in order to power the entire city for very, very cheap. The idea is great in concept, but he ultimately just decided that not telling Superman was a great idea. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. In reality, he didn't do it because he's looking to set off Superman. Now, Superman wasn't the only member of the League there. Billy, genuinely believing Lex Luthor had turned over a new leaf, being hopeful in that way, decided to visit, but not as Captain Marvel. He chose to visit as Billy Batson. But later, when Superman goes crazy, perceiving that there is a bomb underneath, which it has a very suspicious timer on it, so I'm very much willing to give Superman the benefit of the doubt, he ultimately tries to get everybody out of the area. But of course, Billy, looking to go to bat for Lex Luthor and believing heavily in change, wants to check it out first. He wants to ensure that what Superman is saying is true and that that is actually a bomb and not what Lex says that it is. That being a nice, stable energy core. Now, obviously, I feel like, especially a Season 2 Superman, a Season 1 Superman, Superman the Animated Series, he most likely would have gone out of his way to get somebody like Captain Atom down here.
Let's call the Atom or Steel to check the device over. See if what Luthor says is true.
At least someone around here is keeping a cool head.
There's no time for this.
This is a Superman that is jaded, that has dealt with Lex Luthor and his treachery for years. Someone whose morals and ideals are starting to hold him back a little bit. And so ultimately, in the best interest of everybody, he goes to smash his way down to look at the device for power, and in doing so, really makes a mess of the city. Superman ends up fighting Billy in what is one of my favorite combat sequences from like the entire show, because for once Superman isn't getting taken out in like 1 or 2 hits and is actually being treated like a powerhouse, and so is Captain Marvel or Shazam or whatever you want to call him. It was really fun to watch, and it was a great fight. Captain Atom and Superman really put their all into it, and ultimately Billy was defeated because, like, he's 10. Unfortunately, he's not the smartest. Now again, this really does suspiciously look like a bomb, but ultimately when the Atom comes and tests it, it's exactly what Lex Luthor had made it out to be. It is nothing more than a gigantic power source. And while Superman and the Justice League pledge to give their money, that's not an option. Lex Luthor is much willing to rebuild and pay for it because that looks good on his end. Ultimately, this is nothing more than a PR disaster for the Justice League and for Superman, and it leaves him questioning as to whether or not his ideals and his actions are the right thing, especially in a scenario like this. And it even leaves a member of the League, Captain Marvel, extremely jaded and upset. These heroes that he believed in so much have gone and betrayed the very trust that he put into them. They have gone and betrayed the very morals and beliefs that held them in such high regard with the rest of the world.
My whole life I've looked up to the League. You were my heroes, every one of you. And you were more than a hero. I idolized you. I wanted to be you. Whenever I was out there facing down the bad guys, I'd think, what would Superman do? Now I know.
It's this act that forces the Justice League and Superman specifically to look back at the actions and the things that they've done and have to decide whether or not they're doing more harm than good. This was all obviously a test by Lex Luthor. He is trying to make Superman look bad, but at the same time he's trying to push Superman as far as he physically can, hoping that he will break in a similar way that the Justice Lord's version of Superman has. Lex is a D1 hater. All he wants to see is Superman fail, and Lex isn't the only one.
They set you up, Clark.
Does it really make a difference? After all, They.
All of this was manufactured. The fake stealing of military-grade kryptonite. Literally, the entire housing for those poor kids and families was all made so that Superman could go in there and blow up. That was the idea behind it. Waller specifically wanted this so she could create a super army to fight the Justice League initiative greenlit, because Waller's whole thing is doing the right thing by the absolute worst way imaginable. Like, she wants good things to happen, she just does them horribly. And Luthor just likes to mess with Superman, so there's that. But ultimately, all of these events, the way the Justice League has been moving, how one of their own members turned against the League and almost enslaved the world to a bunch of Thanagarians, has left the public shaky. It's even left Lois Lane shaky in Superman.
We got a lot of power, but we only use it to help.
Like when you and Captain Marvel wrecked Lexor City on national television? Or maybe you mean when you fired that big space gun in the desert?
We come on a little strong sometimes, but it's for the people's own good.
That sounds like something Lex would say.
Well, the comparison to Lex was a little bit of a stray. It's in that sentence there that you feel the inklings of Justice Lord Superman. The thing I like the most about Justice Lord Superman as this ideal of evil Superman, especially in comparison to Injustice's Superman, is this idea that he still has this level of hope and moral compass about him, but it's just so twisted. It's this idea that he could truly fall to temptation. This version of evil Superman always felt a little bit more realistic to me as compared to something like Injustice. And this is where the Question comes in. Now, the Question is a private detective turned superhero who's also a weensy bit crazy. I mean, if you're in love with Huntress, you gotta be a lot of bit crazy. But either way, for the most part, he's treated as a conspiracy nut job. He got his hands on, thanks to Cadmus Files, the videos of the alternate universe's Superman murking Lex Luthor. And now, with that knowledge in mind, not only does he go to confront Superman, but he also concocts a plan so that what he believes will always happen, that being Lex Luthor winning presidency, Superman snapping and killing Lex Luthor, and ultimately becoming a Justice Lord, he ultimately decides that he has to take matters into his own hands. Again, this seems a little crazy, a little out of left field. This is Superman we're talking about. But they'll always call you crazy until you right.
Didn't you recently try to lobotomize Doomsday with your heat vision, just as the Justice Lord did?
That's different.
It's the same.
The one thing that always helped to separate Superman, especially from a lot of his other counterparts in the DC universe, which tends to be a lot darker with its heroes, see case in point Batman, was his hopeful and cheerful disposition. So to see that challenged throughout the entirety of this Cadmus arc is a big deal. To see him trying to lobotomize his enemies is huge. That's not a tactic that you would ever want to associate with a character like Superman. The question decides that there is only one singular way to keep Superman from snapping and killing Lex Luthor. And that's to kill Lex Luthor himself. Come on, guys. Question's a bit of a crackpot already. So the idea that he does this and is already liminally attached to the Justice League means that they're not going to take too much heat off of any of this. Unfortunately for him, and something that's a spoiler for a show that's like 20 years old at this point, Lex Luthor's been on that Brainiac stuff. Somehow, some way, he got a piece of Brainiac in him. Not only does he no longer have cancer, but the dude's got superpowers now. So Lex isn't going down to the question, even if the question is highly trained. And ultimately, what we end up getting is what the question believes will be the outcome of the world. It's really, really bleak. Oh, and the question gets legitimately tortured on a children's TV show, and it looks bad. Dude, I swear, they were just allowed to get away with so much. And to think 90s Spider-Man couldn't even throw punches. Wild. Either way, thankfully, Superman does come to save him, but in the process, gets confronted by somebody that he held dear. This guy, for reference, like goes all the way back to Superman the animated series. This was a longtime supporter of Superman, and he no longer does because of the way Superman has been moving.
Humanity doesn't need protection from us.
I used to believe that. I thought you were a guardian angel, come to answer our prayers. But Lucifer was an angel too, wasn't he?
The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and Superman's intentions are better than good, they're great. He is a great man on most days. This ain't one of them. Superman is angry, he is upset, he is acting less like a hero and more like a human. And that's not of any fault of his, he is human. But ultimately, he's not being Superman. And that's hurting him, especially in this moment. Superman's ideals aren't at the front and center, but rather the pain that Kal-El or Clark Kent feels. He isn't embodying being Superman. And ultimately, that is getting members of his own team to turn against him. Those like Captain Atom, who, for reference, he's only doing that because he's part of the government and one of his old generals calls him back because he was in the Air Force. But, you know, that's besides the point. We already saw it with Billy Batson. This is just doubling down. Superman, unfortunately, is no longer this paragon of virtue, not to the public and not even to himself. His ideals are slipping, and ultimately, they're slipping dangerously. He even goes blow for blow with Captain Atom and genuinely almost kills Captain Atom because Captain Atom obviously is doing what he believes is right, even if he's ostensibly in the wrong. But that's kind of besides the point. Either way, this ultimately is a situation where nobody comes out looking good. Cadmus doesn't look good, and Superman especially doesn't look great. And it's extremely unfortunate because this is what happens when the lines start to get blurred, especially with people like Lex Luthor. And of course, it's only compounded upon each other when you have people that Superman trusted and held close to him are turning against him. And Clark is angry that people that he trusted, he held close, considered friends, maybe even family, are turning against him. People like Captain Atom, people like the Doctor. He is ultimately feeling betrayed. And with that betrayal, he wants to go down to Cadmus and shut it down completely. He wants to storm the place with Justice League force and shut it down. An authority that he doesn't exactly have. It's all starting to sound a little too familiar. He is flirting with the lines of completely disregarding his ideals in favor of a better future, in favor of being a better superhero. In quotation marks. Ultimately, he is losing what made him Superman.
Batman said I was supposed to keep you guys honest.
Do I look like Batman to you?
Actually, you kinda do. Especially when you're all scally like that.
Superman isn't acting like himself. More aptly, he is far closer to Batman. And if you've read any Elseworld stories ever, a Batman with Superman's powers never ends up well. It is Batman's human constraints that genuinely make him a good hero. If he was given the powers of, say, someone like Superman, it wouldn't be good for any of us. It is strange, though, that Green Arrow is the voice of reason relative to, say, just the Flash. And I think that's actually key in keeping Superman himself, as Green Arrow makes a fair few good points, even if he is a little confused himself.
Oh, look, I'm an old lefty. The government must do for people what people can't do for themselves. The people sure can't protect themselves from the likes of us.
We're not talking about the government. They came after us, we have to hit them back hard.
Grammy Flash always used to say the trouble with an eye for an eye is that everybody ends up blind.
And what's so interesting about this scene is that Superman is almost unanimously written, especially throughout early Justice League seasons 1 and 2, as having the position that Green Arrow has here. Superman was always the voice of reason and the heart of the Justice League for a majority of the original run of that show. And as we've seen him evolve and become more cynical throughout Justice League Unlimited, he is no longer positioned as the moral compass of the team. Batman specifically bringing in a character like Green Arrow to be human and to ground what is this group of gods to humanity is a very interesting direction to take the Justice League and to take a character like Superman, who has historically been throughout the DC animated universe, this paragon of truth and justice and doing the right thing. To take the right thing for him and to twist it, to make it almost more about the protection of the Justice League as a unit rather than the people of Earth as a whole, was very interesting. I've always loved the idea that the Watchtower, being so high up in the sky and looking down upon everybody, has always created a distance between the heroes the Justice League were when they were at places like the Hall of Justice or Mount Justice versus the kind of heroes they tend to become when you're looking down upon the Earth. And to do that with a character that is so traditionally rooted in being the most human and the most righteous of the group is very cool, because to be human is to have flaws. And while this debate was going on, Lex Luthor low-key hacked inside of the Justice League's Watchtower and used their orbital space laser to kind of blow up the Cadmus lab in New Mexico, which was on top of a bunch of civilians, so by account also blowing up all of those civilians. We never would have known what decision Superman ultimately would have made in that situation. Continuing along the way he was he going to storm Cadmus or not? It was a really good bit of tension, and it was a really great way of exploring Superman's vulnerabilities morally. But ultimately what we have instead is New Mexico getting absolutely blown to smithereens as though it was New Jersey in 2012, shout out Chief Keef. Either way, Superman himself does try to save the day and ultimately fails. The people are left decimated. Their homes, their houses, their buildings, their work, their cars, they're all destroyed. And in that moment, the fragile trust that the people still had left with the Justice League, that they had left with superheroes is completely shattered. Even when the Justice League comes in to give relief efforts and to try to save these people, they actively walk away because they are scared and because they are afraid. This was a gigantic wake-up call not just to Superman, but to the Justice League of how they were acting and how they were moving as a collective. They were moving, inching slowly towards authoritarianism, and it took a disaster event to wake them up to that.
Do anything to hurt you. You have to trust us.
Those ships will move you to a temporary shelter. It's safer.
I'll take my chances.
And I mean, simply let me ask you guys, can you really blame the human populace at this point? We're talking about a people that have had to suffer through a Thanagarian invasion, one of the Justice League own ultimately deciding it would be really cool if she joined her elitist people and decided to, take over the Earth. We also have seen the Justice League have a modicum of failings. We've seen them keep secrets, such as the fact that the orbital station had a gigantic laser on it. They kept that a secret until New Mexico when they needed it. They really did need it, but again, I'm speaking from the looks of the public. Again, we're the viewers, so we understand that a lot of these things that are happening are outside of the Justice League's control or ultimately not their fault. But to the average civilian, that didn't just look like a Fugazi attack. The average civilian won't know that Lex Luthor blew up their home or their loved one, but rather the Justice League did. Ultimately, this is a failing on the League in the eyes of the public. We as the viewer clearly know better than that. But as the public goes, can you really blame them for losing faith in their superheroes? Can we really blame an organization like Cadmus? We can blame Cadmus for the way in which they're going about doing things, but can we blame them for being afraid of superheroes? And can we blame them from being afraid of genuinely taking care of their people by getting a force that could hopefully deal with the superheroes? I don't think we can. But we can definitely blame them for the way in which they tried to do it and the people they aligned themselves with to do it. Again, good idea, really shitty execution, much like how we've seen Superman acting throughout this season. Ultimately, this is the green light that needs to be lit for Waller to say, okay, it's time for us to unleash our genetically modified and created superheroes, and ostensibly one of the worst adaptations of Power Girl I think I've ever seen. Dude, this show was so horny, it's kind of wicked. And with the way everything's going, and it was after all of this cumulative weight has finally settled upon Superman and upon a lot of the members of the League, Superman forgot what it meant to be hopeful. Throughout a lot of this season, Superman has been challenged again and again. His worldview has been challenged, and he has struggled to maintain hope. And in this moment, Luthor got exactly what he wanted, to crush Superman's hope entirely. What would be even more beautiful than seeing Superman snap and become a Justice Lord? It would be to see Superman go away forever because he no longer sees himself as a symbol of hope or someone who can be a proper hero. He decides to turn himself in because his morals, his ideals mean more than being a superhero. They mean more to him than winning a fight against Lex Luthor. And that is something that is beautiful. We see a Superman emboldened by his ideals. Superman's ideals have ultimately become the very weapon Lex Luthor is using against him. Because with the main 7 gone and the rest of the League scattered, who is going to be there to stop him from doing whatever he wants?
Cooperate fully with the investigation. Give them whatever they ask for.
Let's also be so for real. Lex even admitted it in a few other episodes before this. He doesn't want to be president because he'd have to give up too much power and authority. Rather, he is doing everything. He's doing all of this to get Superman in the Justice League out of his way entirely. He planned this entire time to use Superman's own morals against him, to turn them into shackles and to turn them into kryptonite shackles in order to get Superman out of his way so that he could put himself in a robot body and fully fuse with Brainiac and, be hunky happy Dory. Now, obviously, Batman spoils this because he's ultimately able to get the Justice League on board with not turning themselves in, and also gets Amanda Waller to help him in taking out Lex Luthor. Ultimately, Lex's plan nearly succeeded and provided me one of my favorite Superman stories ever in a Justice League show, because they were really challenging his ideals and challenging him as a character, not just physically. I've always held steadfast to the idea that with a character like Superman, it is rarely the physical threat that ever makes his stories great, but rather the ideological threat. And I think this season of Justice League Unlimited did a fantastic job of providing us a real ideological threat and a real breakdown of what it means to be Superman and kind of what it means to be hopeful as well. This was Lex's plan the entire time. For the entire season, we have gotten a wonderful, in my opinion, masterclass of long-term storytelling, going all the way back to Superman the Animated Series, going all the way back to season 2 of this show. All of that in order to deconstruct Superman as a character. And the final battle, well, second to final battle in this show, also does something amazing. It forces the League to once again fight themselves from a better world. But obviously, now it's like Brainiac's goons. But either way, it's a great visual representation of Superman once again beating the ideology and the idea of becoming a Justice Lord. It is him beating back the idea of becoming the very thing that he is believed to become once Lex Luthor becomes president. It is genuinely a beautiful look into him fighting that. Again, it's fantastic symbolism. It is really well done. I also liked getting to see that version's Flash if he was a Justice Lord, and it just being Reverse Flash is a really cool Easter egg. Either way, this fight goes well, but Lex in his new gold-coated look is quite nigh unbeatable. And ultimately what it takes for the team to beat him is the Flash and his near sacrifice. This is again one of my absolute favorite scenes from the show. His all-around-the-world punch, which also inspired his super move in Injustice. Again, a lot of things this show did low-key inspired Injustice into what they did, just so they can have an excuse for all the superheroes to fight. But either way, I found this beyond enjoyable. This sequence and scene was amazing. It also, I can't remember if it proved or disproved that the Speed Force exists in this universe. Again, better for Watchtower database, less for me. Either way, it was a beautiful sequence, but it also serves to set up one last moral conflict. We get to see a glorious scene of him rejecting his hatred, rejecting the things that he wants to do in favor of being the superhero we have come to love. His ideals were no longer kryptonite. They were the very thing that held this world together.
I'm not the man who killed President Luthor. Right now, I wish to heaven that I were, but I'm not.
Oh, and Wally lives in this universe because I can only handle so much heartbreak in my life when it comes to losing a favorite speedster named Wally. Either way, the Justice League did exactly what they set out to do. They saved the world, and they kept everybody safe. But Superman was still feeling the weight of the actions of the League as a collective, of the things that he did and the acts that he chose to do that were not exactly Superman-like. He ultimately decides that disbanding the League still needs to happen on an entire scale, getting rid of it completely, acting independently as heroes. But it is once again Green Arrow that steps up. He speaks for the common man, as he really should. Love this version of Green Arrow. And it is in that impassioned speech by Green Arrow that is recognized by the main seven that they are still needed, that they are heroes, and that the people need them, whether they believe they're needed or not. And I think it's beautiful.
Says who? You remember what we did yesterday? We saved the world, again. You don't think that has any value? Well, think again, pal. The Justice League goes on, with or without you. Look, nobody can question your service or commitment to making things better. If you're quitting because you think you've already done your fair share, fine. we'll throw you a parade. But if you're quitting because it's easier than continuing the fight, then you're not the heroes we all thought you were. The world needs the Justice League, and the Justice League needs you, Superman.
It was a beautiful end to a beautiful arc. The Cadmus arc, I think, is some of the best work that DCAU ever did, and I truly loved it. They did for Superman specifically. I genuinely loved it. I also loved how much of a role Green Arrow played in this season, and how he really is the person that guarded the Guardians. I feel like they were trying to make a parallel that if had the other Superman had Green Arrow and Flash, things could have ended very differently. And even at the end of the day, sometimes we gotta cut our heroes some slack. Because as much as we look up to Superman and his ideals and the way in which he's built his life upon it, he's still human.
I've been as tough on the Justice League as anyone, especially on Superman. That's just because he's always set such a high standard. I'm gonna cut him a break. He's only human.
And of course, at the start of the very next season, Lex is back to his usual evil tomfoolery. He was never a good guy. It's all an act. Also, that Superman could finally lose that hope that made him such a great hero. Hope a lot of the times is very fickle. It can be hard to hold on to, and often for me personally, I find it almost more comforting to despair, as though it's easier, like eating junk food instead of making yourself a home-cooked meal. It feels more convenient. I'm not sure what it's like for the rest of you guys, but that's how it feels for me. To be hopeful feels like taking the harder path. To have hope in other people, in the future of the world that I am living in, it's hard. And to see characters like Superman, who often represent this ideal that people want to strive to be like, also struggle with his hope, to struggle with what it means to be an icon like he is. It's something beautiful, and I think Dwayne McDuffie and the writing team really knocked it out of the park with this story arc that they brought Superman on through a lot of season 4 of Justice League Unlimited. Now, if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you all so much for watching. If you want to support me as a creator, I have a Patreon down below, as well as a YouTube membership. You'll be able to see one exclusive members only video per month and be able to vote on that exclusive members only video every month as well. On my Patreon, you'll be able to see my full vision for these videos without the changes I have to make for copyright in YouTube. And with channel membership, you'll be able to send stickers and fun things like that. So if you're interested, the links are down below. And even if you want to support me without spending any money, liking and subscribing goes a long way. So thank you all so much. I hope you'll have an absolutely fantastic day.